Welcome to the Starzology Astrology podcast. I'm your host, Alison Price, and in this special edition, we have a guest, Jane Hawley Stevens, who is an author of a recent book called Celestial Garden: Growing Herbs, Vegetables, and Flowers in Sync with the Moon and the Zodiac. I was fortunate enough to interview Jane this week, and I want to share our conversation with you. Okay, so welcome, Jane. I am so happy to have you with me.
Thank you, Alison. I'm really happy to be here.
And Jane, I know that you are a keen writer, gardener, and herbalist, and perhaps many more things, many more strings on your bow. And you have a recent book that has come out. Could you tell us a little bit about this?
Yes, it's the book is called The Celestial Garden: Growing Herbs, Vegetables, and Flowers According to the Moon and the Zodiac. I've been interested in herbs. Well, I have a horticulture degree that I got in the early 80s. I started specializing in herbs right after I got out of college. I became certified organic in 89. And so I just wanted to, when you have a big interest in something, you always want to add new layers to it. So around that same time, the late 80s, I just started picking up the Old Farmer's Almanac and planting and harvesting according to their recommendations. So it's put me in a lovely rhythm, both in gardening and in life.
This sounds so interesting. And from having read the book, I understand that in the main, you're talking about working with the lunar cycles for planting and harvesting and so on.
That's right.
So are you looking at each of the 8 cycles, or could you explain a little bit to our listeners about what we mean when we say the lunar cycles, that like the new moon and so on?
That's right. So in my style of gardening by the moon, or the celestial gardening, I just break the moon into the 4 quarters. So the new moon, the first quarter, the full moon, and the last quarter. And just with those 4 quarters, you can really divide up your chores quite a bit in the garden to keep everything in a really good rhythm.
I mean, this sounds like a great idea, because that would technically give us kind of a week of new moon and then a week of first quarter as it goes through the month. Because perhaps for non-astrologers, it may be difficult to even determine these phases. But if you've got, say, a week to do your full moon chores or activities or fun activities, let's face it, it's hardly chores, is it, when we love it so much, that you would have this whole week to maybe focus on one particular type of planting or cutting back or whatever it is. Is that what you're saying?
That's mostly true, but what happens is the first rhythm you get into are those 4 quarters of the moon. But after that, you start laying on the 12 astrological symbols. And so some of those are watery or moist influences, called in the gardening by the moon system, that would be earth and water. And the dry influences, fire and air, would be more fine-tuned for like drying or harvesting or things like that. So there are a couple, it's like looking at the old-fashioned clocks with hands. You have 2 influences that are kind of helping you determine your chores for the day.
I think that's a great analogy to that you've got the 2 hands of the clock, because the one is the full big cycle and the others the different signs within. Because if we had, say, a full moon week, you may have Aries in there, you may have Sagittarius in there, and therefore, or Cancer or a water sign or something. So what you're saying is you would then move to a different kind of pace with what you were planting or doing.
Yeah. And, it is really fun, because it is like putting together a puzzle, or better yet, living within nature's puzzle. Yeah. It's a really fun system. And it can be challenging. And so you just do the best you can. But I think for anyone who gives it a try, they'll find those natural rhythms really do pay off to give up your bigger ideas of what you think you should be doing, and just glancing at what nature has to offer for that day and adjusting your schedule.
think it's a very interesting book what you've created here, where you're wanting to live within the natural cycles, the natural rhythms, not only the solar cycle, the big overarching one, but the monthly as the moon is moving through as well.
Yeah, it's really been wonderful for me, and especially as that double Aries who just wants to start projects all the time. I found my before I practiced this, my gardens were so weedy because all I would do is start seeds and start seeds. But once I got in this rhythm, I was able to put in my weeding days, and my gardens became much tidier.
Oh, so for someone who perhaps is coming to this topic as a newbie into the gardening world, it's offering some guidance on what to do on which days, so that you are aligning yourself with the celestial movements. That's what you're saying, is it?
Yes, it's a great combination of, aligning your garden with the planets for sure. I just think it's natural. It's a natural.
I think it's amazing. I find it a very interesting topic. I personally have planted 2 herb gardens myself. Which, unfortunately, I don't no longer live in those homes, but the gardens remain and can still be seen on Google Earth, which is kind of crazy in a way. But
Oh, that's fabulous!
Yeah,
well done, Allison.
So, can you tell us about whereabouts are you planting, and which zone are you in?
So I'm in zone 4. I'm located in Wisconsin. I think we're about the 46th parallel. I'm an hour from the state capital, Madison, Wisconsin.
Okay.
I happen to be it's called the Baraboo Bluffs. It's a very beautiful natural area that the Nature Conservancy pays extra attention to and preserves. But we're in an old mountain range, which the glaciers kind of changed when they came through. But anyway, we're in a little bit of a different zone, being up top this bluff.
Okay. And how many acres are you on, or what's the size of your land at the moment?
Oh, well, this is where I really feel humbly blessed, because we have 130 acres
Wow.
in this beautiful area. And it was just really wonderful how we were able to be there. But we cultivate about 3 acres, which would be, tilled and with rows of herbs. But we collect a lot of the herbs out of the wild as well, both, some of the trees we use, like prickly ash or wild cherry bark or oak bark, slippery elm. And also we have some wild prairies where St. John's wort, although it's not a native plant, I can still collect it there. And some others as well. But yeah, we have a good diversity.
That is amazing that you've got the, access to this amount of land, which you're clearly stewarding correctly by the sounds of it. And how many years have you been working this area?
About since 91. And my husband is also a horticulturist. We both have horticulture degrees.
Oh.
And he's the curator at the University Arboretum of the flowering trees and shrubs. So, I mean, really, I do tell him this land picked us to be the earth stewards.
Oh, that is so interesting. Yes, indeed. So,
Yeah.
just in general, then, are you growing, say, herbs, for example, for culinary or for medicinal, or are you making them into soaps, or how are you producing, and for what reason?
Okay, so I first got into herbs for the culinary and the craft uses, but when I saw how effective they were for my son's earache, I just became really a devotee of the healing qualities of herbs. And from that, I developed my whole product line, 4 Elements Organic Herbals, where we grow the herbs that go into our 70 different products.
Oh, this is amazing. So what was that website again? 4 Elements?
Herbals. It's 4elementsherbals.com.
Fantastic. I will put a link below the podcast and below the blog spot as well. So our listeners can contact you.
Thank you.
Yes. And so, well, gosh, this is such a vast topic. If you're not doing herbs, are you doing vegetables as well there, or?
Yes, we grow just about everything we eat. I mean, we are in the dairy state, so pretty much our grocery list is, cheese, milk.
Yeah.
But yeah, we grow all of our vegetables, and then I do canning, but my husband has really picked up on the canning where we have lots of salsas and whole tomatoes and tomato soup. I do more drying too. So I have some like dried pears and things like that. And but we have quite the impressive basement full of our stored fruits and vegetables.
Well, this is amazing. And this is all available on your website, is that correct?
Well, we don't offer the food because that's just so much labor.
Okay.
Yeah, it's the herbs, the herbal products that I offer on the
Right.
website. And there is a really nice, very short video about showing my farm, a little me giving a tour of my farm on the website.
Fantastic. We'll put a link to that as well. So I see in your book you have you're talking about 5 main things here. I'm just going to run through them. The one is the moon phases. Next is aligning the tasks within the garden to make sure you're spending your time doing the right things. And then you have some tips for the gardener to do during each phase of the moon.
Yeah.
And then you get onto something rather interesting, which is creative rituals. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about what that means.
Well, I think the earth really does respond to people's intention and their actions. In fact, I've heard that nature it will understand your actions better than your words. So if you create a ritual and in your heart, you're just trying to maybe give thanks, like even our Thanksgiving, going out to collect the vegetables you're going to serve to others, or offering a little like incense or doing something on your land.
Yeah.
The earth really does respond, and the result would be that I feel the earth would be more in tune with us and we would be more in tune with the earth, which I think is really lost in our culture these days.
I think this is a particularly interesting piece inside the book that I will certainly be rereading as well. I found that to be very interesting as well. And then your third point, you walk us through how you planted a chakra garden. So I understand that you've taken the 7 chakras and we have plants allocated to each chakra, and perhaps you could explain a little more about that.
Oh, that is a really fun project. So that particular piece of land used to be where I planted all my herbs. Just the first few years I was on this property. And then one year we had a very hard winter with no snow. So everything died, all the thyme, sage, lavenders. But then I had a clean slate. And David and I met at a formal garden, both working at the Dallas Arboretum at the time. So we both have a love of formal gardening too. And I thought this would make a lovely formal garden. Every year we do a field day, and free open field day where we educate people on plants. This was a really great. Okay, then somebody gave me a book on the chakra system right about that same time. And I looked and I thought that looks like a garden design to me. And this has turned out to be a very nice way for me to organize plants and just specimens, not where I'd have to grow whole rows of everything, but I can group them according to the body systems that they support.
That is so interesting. And the chakras themselves are certainly a sister, almost a new age method of working with things as well. I think that was also incredibly interesting what you had to say about this, that you can align not only yourself with the main systems, but with your body as well, with the earth, with the plant, so that you are in sync, as you say, with your gardening.
That's a good point, because it really brings us down to the basis of all of this, which is an old Hermes quote, which is as above, so below, because whatever you do to the earth will end up showing up in our bodies. And, I just find that putting all these systems or studying all these systems shows how we are so connected in this beautiful web of life.
Yes, this is a very, very interesting topic. The idea of being aware, even in our busy lives, as many of our listeners will be, that there are these, you can easily, with a few simple steps, start tuning yourself into the natural rhythms through gardening, such as you're suggesting in your fabulous book. And in that way, people can begin to, I want to say, get out the rat race or get off the digital scrolling and move back to the natural rhythms that are of the earth, from which we are all from. Let's face it,
Yeah, and that sounds so simple, and yet there's something so tricky about that. But I think, when even you hear a bird or something catches your eye or your ear, I think it's really worth just pausing a little bit and seeing if you have another message there, or just any way at all that you can, any method that would help to tune you into nature, like look at the sunset, take a little pause and look at the sunrise or sunset, or just notice what colors are showing, or are the clouds out today? Any of those things, I think, help to tune us into nature more and more.
Yes, yes. I think it's very interesting. And because, of course, we are an astrology podcast, we do want to align with that. And also, I noticed that you have, for each sign of the zodiac, you've got some suggested plants that align with the sign. Is that the thing? Or are you saying that if you're a Gemini, you should be planting these Gemini plants generally? Or
Oh, I think the chapter you're talking about, I think it's the last chapter. And what I'm suggesting, because I am such an avid plant lover and earth lover, that I'm kind of suggesting to people, no matter what sign they're in, they might be able to contribute to connecting people to nature using their natural talents. Like Gemini would be great teachers or writers on, subjects relating to nature.
Yeah.
And then you get maybe like somebody who's Aries who wants to start a farm or something like that.
Such as yourself, right?
That's right.
And also, my other question that popped into my mind when I was going through this was that if, say, for instance, whatever your moon sign is, which I know you're Capricorn, would you be more likely to be aligned to that phase, do you think, as the moon's coming through, and that type of grouping? Or is the whole idea that we bring a holistic approach into the gardening and planting that we're doing?
I'm not sure if I'm going to understand your question exactly, but I don't, what's my problem with answering that question is that I think so much like in Aries, and I know you took a look at my chart, and like my moon is in Capricorn, which makes it completely we're not disabled, but
detriment. Yes,
detriment, right? And so all I can do is think like an Aries, like and with my Mars up there too, I just want to run to the top of the mountain. And, so all I definitely identify more with my fire sign more than my moon. My moon's in detriment, and it just wants to be climbing with the goat up to the top of the mountain too. So, but I think other people would be different. I think that would depend. Their moon would be more sensitive.
Yeah, it's very interesting that I find that people tend to either be solo driven, which is yourself and I, but many are lunar driven and tuned into that ebb and flow that continuously, and it's to do, of course, with the pull of the water, as you say. How do we feel during these times? So it does depend if you're more solar inclined, I think, or lunar inclined, how it's going to be manifested, really. Yeah.
I would agree. Yes.
Yes.
I would really like your listeners to just think about using an herb for simple remedies as their first stop before they hit the pharmacy.
Right.
As somebody who comes from really just a normal American tradition, but have learned to use and trust nature first as my healer, I get so impressed every time when I try an herb. And if there's a little ailment in your family, just another thing great about herbalism, it engages you in your own healing process, which I think is a very important part of healing. You have to look closely at yourself or your loved one. You can research what plant could support that body system that's showing some weakness. And then you can go, either collect it, grow it, or find your herb shop and make this remedy, and with your own loving hands, serve it to yourself or your family. And there is just such a healing power in that. And there's just nothing in our culture that cultivates that. And that's a message I would love to give your astrologer listeners.
Yes, that sounds wonderful, because isn't it true that, I mean, the first medicine was plants, and even today, many of the medications that we are given and dished out were based on the actual extractions from certain plants, as I understand it,
Right. In fact, the root word of drug is druga, which means dried herb.
Wow.
So it all goes back to the herbs. And I had some kids over doing a tour just a couple of weeks ago, and I was telling them, how empowered would you feel if you knew what medicines were growing outside your door, and you could just walk outside your door and collect them for your family? And one kid said, you would save so much money. And then he thought, I said, yes. And then he said, you wouldn't have to go to the doctor so much. And I said, yes. And just think of how empowered people would be. And then I had fun thinking about what systems would start breaking down if people really did that. And I had a lot of fun with that thought.
That sounds great. I think in the modern world, we are, well, I was brought up that you go to the doctor, they dish out medicine and you take it and you just do what you're told. But to be able to consider going back to the root, literally the root essences of these potions and what have you, that can make you better or soothe an ailment or whatever it is, take down a rash or something like that. And to even consider it in this modern day, as a city liver myself, it's, there's no plants available for me, but to actually start thinking, well, I ought to be doing this, and I need to find these things. And I think it's a great, astrologically, this particular movement and what you have created on your farm and with your herbs and books and that is very much leaning into this as the age of Aquarius comes through, that we are going back to find what is a solution for everybody rather than just a few people who would be able to have these solutions. And I think this is a great thing that you're doing here, that you're bringing this knowledge up to date to be served to the current people who are reading it and thinking, oh, I think it's a great thing. I really do. I admire the work you've done. And honestly, I wanted to say that when I read your book, I thought, this is the book I wish I'd written. I think it is so interesting that you are aligning to these cycles. And that's what I find the most interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Allison. I really appreciate your interest and your time with me. This has just been wonderful, and I'm so happy to share with your listeners too.
And so it's been great having you. So tell us then, is your book is available now? Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, it's printed now, and it's in the Chelsea Green warehouse, and it will land in my apothecary. I'll be able to ship it starting tomorrow.
Okay, this is fantastic. So if people are interested and would be interested in picking up a copy, they can go to your website and
yeah.
Fantastic. This is lovely. And of course, it's perfect timing for the end of the season, isn't it?
It is. And before the growing season.
Before the growing season, indeed, indeed.
Where are you located, Allison?
I'm in Vancouver, Canada, actually. So, yeah.
Oh, it's so beautiful up there.
Yes, yes.
Oh, you have great weather and great plants.
Well, I live in the city, but as I said, I've always had gardens before, and this is very much. I have a couple of articles on my website about herb gardening as well, with astrology, of course, but which I'll put a link to below, just as a matter of interest for the readers, the listeners, if they want to find out a little more.
That's great.
So thank you so much, Jane, for joining me today to discuss your fabulous new book, Celestial Gardening, Growing Herbs, Vegetables and Flowers in Sync with the Moon and the Zodiac.
It's been my pleasure. I just love the subject, so I love to share it. And it ties together my favorite things, the earth and the stars and the people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me today. I wish you the very best of luck.
Thank you, Allison.
So there we have it. This was my wonderful interview with Jane Hawley Stevens and her new book, The Celestial Garden, Growing Herbs, Vegetables and Flowers in Sync with the Moon and the Zodiac. And once again, her website is 4elementsherbal.com. Thank you so much for listening. And if you found value in this podcast episode, please consider sharing it with somebody who would be interested. If you have any questions regarding this episode or our podcast in general, please feel free to email me at starzology@gmail.com, and we will get to your questions and answers in a later episode. Thank you so much and have a wonderful day. Thanks so much for getting this far through the episode. I just want to take a moment to tell you about the two main options of my astrology services. So the first one is coaching. If you are an aspiring astrologer, and by that I mean someone who's perhaps a hobbyist astrologer or someone who's learning astrology or a student, or you've got a few books and you've been doing it for a while, but perhaps you need a little bit of help to bring it all together, then maybe getting some astrological coaching from me would be the answer for you. The astrology coaching I offer is a 1-hour session on Zoom, and it's tailored to answer your particular questions. For example, if you have issues with natal chart readings, we can go there. Or if you're having problems working with your forecasting, we can go there. Or even basic astrology stuff, or even getting yourself organized for your astrology business. The idea is that astrological coaching will answer your particular questions. It's tailored specifically to you and where you are in your astrological journey. And I'm happy to help you out with some guidance about how you can get going, what to focus on, and what to dismiss. So that would be the astrological coaching for people trying to learn astrology. The second astrological service I offer is consultations. So this is for someone who perhaps doesn't know anything about astrology, but they just want to have their chart read or get their chart done. Call it what you will. So once more, this is a 1-hour consultation over Zoom. I will interpret your chart, tell you about the main features, tell you about where the energy is flowing, and all the rest of what is entailed in a thorough natal chart interpretation. I can also add in some forecasting in there too, bearing in mind we only have 1 hour. So just in summary, I've got coaching for people who want to learn astrology, and I've got consultations for those who want to get an astrology reading done. I'm Alison Price from Starzology.com. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you next time.